Do I want to live in St. Augustine or do I want to live in Palm Coast? And that's the million-dollar question you got to ask yourself. But the good news is that really in our area, it's going to be about a $500,000 question. Whether you're looking at St. Augustine for the downtown area, the historic charm and the culture that it offers, or you're looking at Palm Coast where it's going to have more affordability and more space to kind of spread your wings and grow your family. They both are great options, and in today's video, we're going to give you everything you need to know about both of them. What's up everyone, it's Thomas with Real Broker here in St. Augustine, Florida, and if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida, make sure you reach out to me and my team. All we try to do is give you the information so that you can make an educated decision on what you want to do, which is buy, sell, or invest here in northeastern Florida. So in today's video, what we're going to do is cover some of the similarities between St. Augustine and Palm Coast, because at the end of the day, they're only about 30 to 45 minutes apart. Then we're going to go into some of the trade-offs and differences, because when you're actually talking about being 30 to 45 minutes apart, there are some major differences between St. Augustine and Palm Coast. Then we're going to take a look at the real estate market, we're going to talk about schools, and we're also going to talk about growth here in the area and what that means for you when you buy in that particular section. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about some of the similarities between Palm Coast and St. Augustine. And in reality, they're only about 30 to 45 minutes apart, so they're going to have a ton of things that are comparable. When we're talking about the weather, when we're talking about your distance to the beach or the intercoastal or the St. Johns River, they're all pretty much the same. They're not going to change too much, because at the end of the day, they're only 30 to 45 minutes apart. And that's one of the great things. Whether you choose to live in St. Augustine or you choose to live in Palm Coast, they're so close to each other that you can just drive to either one. If you want to go to Flagler Beach for some reason, you're living in St. Augustine, you can just drive over there for the day. If you're living in Palm Coast, you want to go to downtown St. Augustine, you can just head over there. It's only about 30 to 45 minutes depending on where you live in each city. Just depends. But the reason that people fall onto St. Augustine and Palm Coast is because we live in northeastern Florida and we have some of the best weather in the entire state, not to mention the entire country. I grew up in the northeastern part of the country. I was born in New York, lived there for a little bit. I moved to New Jersey. I lived in Pennsylvania for a little bit. I got to understand what the weather was like up there, and not that I'm a huge fan of the cold, but I did enjoy when the fall came around, the leaves started to change, and you had that crisp air, that was out there. You took a deep breath in and just feels like the freshest thing that you could breathe for the entire year. Once that crisp air comes, everyone knows it, right? But really in Florida, you don't get that, especially when you go further south in Florida than Palm Coast, and that's because it's extremely tropical. So throughout the entire year, it's going to be hot. But when you're up here in northeastern Florida, we do get a slight change of the season. When it gets into like October, November, it starts to cool off pretty good. And there's even some weeks during the December, January timeframe where we'll see at nighttime that it gets down into the 30s, and that during the day, you're going to have to wear a jacket or a hoodie or something a little bit different, opposed to just a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops. And for many people, they don't want to have to worry about a hoodie or a jacket or any more additional items that you got to wear or buy. But my wife's not one of those people. She likes to layer. She likes the style. She likes the colors of the fall. She likes to do all that kind of stuff. So throwing on a jacket or a hoodie or something additional helps her in her style, but not everyone likes that. So the weather is great here in Palm Coast, but we're also pretty much in the same hurricane risk. Now, if you look at landfall of hurricanes over the past 125 years, you can see that St. Johns County only had 4 major hurricanes make landfall here in the area. And I think Flagler County is only 6. When you're taking a look at South Florida, you're taking a look at the Panhandle, or really anywhere south of Flagler County and St. Johns County, you're going to see that they're getting hit with hurricanes more often than we are. And that, especially if you're risk averse when it comes down to hurricanes and you're worried about it, you want to make sure you're up here in the northeastern pocket, because when it comes down to the risk and the velocity, the speed of these hurricanes, we're much safer. And our building code actually reflects that. In South Florida, you have to build with concrete block, and in North Florida, you don't, because we just don't have the same average wind speed when it comes down to hurricanes. So that makes northeastern Florida a lot more attractive, in my opinion, than living in South Florida or the Panhandle. And as a result of the safety of our area to hurricanes, our insurance is actually much cheaper than the entire state of Florida. If you look at the entire state of Florida, the average homeowner's insurance premium is going to be around $4,000 a year. When you compare that to northeastern Florida, we're really going to be around the $2,000 to $2,500 mark a year, as long as you're in flood zone X and you have a newer build home. And guys, if you want to learn more about insurance, I do have a video above I'll have posted where I talk about the insurance issue here in the state of Florida, what happened, what's going on today, and what it's going to look like in the future. I balled it up in one good video just so you could have a better understanding of it. Check it out above. And that's another major similarity between St. Augustine and Palm Coast. Though St. Augustine has its downtown historic area, it also has a ton of new construction. And Palm Coast, Flagler County is no different. They have a ton of new construction as well. So if you're looking for a newer built home engineered to the highest standards that we have, then you're going to be able to find it in both Palm Coast and St. Augustine, but they're going to be different prices. That leads us into some of our trade-offs and some of the negatives of living in St. Augustine or Palm Coast. Now, you probably know of St. Augustine because you came here on vacation first and found out that you really loved it. And that's one of the major bonuses and negatives of living here in downtown St. Augustine. At the end of the day, we live in a place that people want a vacation to, and that's kind of like living on vacation year round, except that you got to work, right? But here in St. Augustine, we have a huge tourism industry. I think 6 to 8 million people visit St. Augustine every single year, with the peaks being during summer, spring break, and at the end of the year between Christmas and New Year's. It becomes a madhouse here. It gets extremely packed and there's a lot of congestion, especially surrounding that downtown historic area, that if you're living here and if you're living especially in the historic area, it's a nightmare for you because it adds at least a 30-minute delay time to anything you got to do, because you got to get through the traffic of the gridlock that happens especially during the wintertime and Night of Lights in that area specifically. Another negative about St. Augustine and Palm Coast, but more or less St. Augustine, is that there is a ton of new construction here in the area. And when you're looking at how St. Augustine and St. Johns counties changed over the last 5 years, you can see that it's pretty much 10x what it did the previous 10 years. So for a lot of the locals here, it went from pretty much being a rural area to new construction, master plan community, 18,000 homes here, 5,000 homes here, 4,000 homes here. And Palm Coast is no different. They are building at a good clip down in Palm Coast, but it's not nearly at the same rate of what you see here in St. Johns County. Everywhere you look, at one point used to be farmlands and cows and all that kind of stuff. Now it's pretty much, hey, you see a car wash, you see a master plan community, and you also see like an oil change place and a mattress store, right? Those are popping up everywhere. To wrap up the negatives for St. Augustine is that there's going to be a good bit of tourism, there's going to be a good bit of development, especially in the next coming years, because I believe that's how St. Johns County is going to go anymore, just because so many people want to live here. But also it's going to be just more congested, it's going to be more expensive than looking at Palm Coast. But we got to talk about some of the negatives of Palm Coast, and believe me, there are many negatives about living in Palm Coast. Now, you don't have the tourism industry, you don't have the amount of people coming there, but that then also means that you lack an entertainment, a nightlife, some good food options. Palm Coast really doesn't have that, and if you're looking for that, you're either coming to St. Augustine or if you're going down to Flagler Beach. So the city of Palm Coast is very commercial in terms of their restaurant space. It's more or less in a strip mall. Everything is off of the two major highways, which is Palm Coast Parkway and Route 100, which is your east and west that run through Palm Coast. So it's going to be super residential, and then you'll have your commercial strips where you'll find all that stuff. Whereas if you want a downtown, like a walkable area, you can find that in West King District here in St. Augustine. You can find the downtown area, Fullerwood, a little bit in Volano Beach nowadays, and also St. Augustine Beach. So you have more options for that walkable Main Street type of vibe, whereas Palm Coast, you don't have that at all. Another negative about Palm Coast is that in general, the city of Palm Coast operates as a giant HOA, and that's not great, especially if you're looking to get away from that completely. You're not paying for it, well, you are paying for it through your taxes, but the city of Palm Coast acts as a giant HOA, and they'll tell you like, hey, your neighbor complained, you got to cut your grass. Oh, hey, you have a boat behind your fence that I can see visibly from the street. The city drives by, they see it, they're going to send you a notice in the mail, then a potential fine in the future. There are a lot of nitpicky things that the city of Palm Coast operates and restricts on homeowners. One of the major things is like, okay, let's say if you owned John's Plumbing Service and you were central out of Palm Coast. Well, if you had a truck that had your branding on it, you're not allowed to have that parked in your driveway. It has to go in your garage has to be closed. It can't be parked in your driveway unless it's covered. So this makes no sense, and this is why the city of Palm Coast gets a lot of heat for this. But okay, so now you got to cover it with a tarp, or you need to cover the branding with a magnet of some sort, so you just have a blank slate. Your neighbors can complain on you, the city can drive by and see it. You're going to get a fine or a notice of like, hey, you need to take care of these things. And that's one of the major negatives about living in Palm Coast. But in the same token, right, like I just covered some negatives about it, like it keeps the neighborhood of Palm Coast looking pretty uniform and well kept. So if you drive through Palm Coast and you've lived in a whole bunch of different places without an HOA, you know how nasty some of the properties can be with cars stacked on cinder blocks or boats in the front yard that aren't maintained. It can look pretty bad. So that's one of the benefits there. And in terms of St. Augustine and their traffic, right, is like, well, outside of those major tourist times, us locals get to enjoy our city, and it's awesome, right? The amphitheater is amazing, the live music in downtown is amazing, the food scene here in St. Augustine is amazing, all the festivals they do are amazing, but it comes with the price of heavy tourism and not having access to it at certain parts of the year. Okay, now that we covered some of the negatives about Palm Coast and St. Augustine, I want to talk about the real estate market here in the area. I want to talk to you about the median sale price here, I want to talk to you about the insurance, and I also want to talk to you about taxes and how they differ between both areas on average. So if you're looking for the most affordable area, you definitely want to go with Palm Coast. In terms of the price of the home, your median sale price there is going to be $369,000. But that's because there's, the lack of going out to eat, the nightlife, the entertainment, the dining, all that kind of stuff, Palm Coast really doesn't have. Is it coming in the future? I believe so, but as of right now, it's not there. And if you look at St. Augustine, it has all that kind of stuff, but it's going to be at a higher price tag. The median sale price there is $510,000, so roughly $140,000 difference between both locations and a 30 to 45 minute drive. Is it worth it? That's totally up to you. It's totally subjective to what you and your family wants. So now we talked about median sale price. Of course, in both areas, you're going to have $1 million homes on the beach. You're going to have $200,000 mobile homes that are in the area. It just depends on what you're looking for in each area, but just give you a good median, that's what it is. So what I wanted to do is talk about insurance as well, because insurance throughout northeastern Florida is going to be about the same. If you're looking at a home that's built within the past couple years to the highest standards, you're going to see a price of about $100 to $150 a month. If you're looking at an older home, it's probably going to be somewhere between $150 to $200 a month. Now we're just talking about homes that are in flood zone X. They're not required to have flood insurance, and they have a newer roof, they have newer AC, all that kind of stuff, just to give you a roundabout. So you're probably going to look at somewhere between $2,000 to $2,500 a year. But if you are looking at a home that is in a flood zone outside of flood zone X, this is where the costs really start to add up. So what I did is I reached out to my insurance guy, Justin Thompson with Brightway Insurance. He's my main go-to for everything. He's the best. So I reached out to him about one of the properties we were considering. It's currently on the market in Palm Coast, but it's pretty much on the border of Palm Coast, St. Johns County, just so you guys get a good idea of what insurance is going to be. Now this home was built within the last couple years. It was built by KB Homes, 18 Las Casitas Boulevard, and I wanted to know what is going to be the homeowner's insurance for the monthly, and also what does flood insurance look like on this property because it's located in flood zone AE. And this is where the costs start to add up. So if we're taking a look at the monthly homeowner's insurance, it's going to be $109 a month. So you're thinking like, Tom, that's nothing. That's $1,100, $1,200 a year. That's not bad at all. But the thing is when you add flood insurance, and if you are in a flood zone and you are using a mortgage to buy your home, if you don't own your home straight out, you will be required to have flood insurance by your lender. That's where things really start to add up. And you can see the flood insurance cost is almost $5,000 per year, which is obviously a huge chunk of change. Now this isn't difference between St. Augustine and Palm Coast. This is just what it costs to live on the water these days. Okay, now that we talked about insurance a little bit, I kind of give you both sides of it. Like, hey, if you're going to be in flood zone X, this is what it's going to be. If you're going to be in flood zone AE, this is what it's going to be. Obviously, being in flood zone AE is going to be much more expensive than flood zone X, but that's going to be similar in both St. Augustine and Palm Coast. But let's talk about taxes and how that looks. So I went ahead and I did the calculations for you, and I based it off of a $400,000 home. A lot of the people in the area between St. Augustine and Palm Coast are buying that type of home. So I just want to give the basic information. Really you could double, hey, if you're looking for $800,000, just double my numbers here. Just do me a favor. If not, reach out to me directly. I'll help you out. We'll figure it out. But just to give you a roundabout, we use $400,000 across the city of St. Augustine, St. Johns County, and the city of Palm Coast, just so you have a good idea of what everything's going to cost. So St. Johns County has a ton of different tax districts, and it really just depends geographically where you're at, but I wrote down a couple of them just so we have a good idea, and I think the contrast I want to give you is like, hey, the highest tax area is going to be like the downtown area, and that's because you're paying for a whole bunch of ancillaries that go with living in downtown and everything that happens in downtown. So if you're looking at buying a home in the city of St. Augustine, within the city limits, your taxes are roughly going to be $6,934 on a $400,000 home. Now, if you compare that to St. Johns County, so if you're just outside the city limits and you're in St. Johns County, this can vary depending on where you're looking, but I just pulled St. Johns County close to where I live because I'm literally right on the other side of the city limits. The taxes on a $400,000 house is $4,792. And then compare that to Palm Coast. Now, the city of Palm Coast operates outside of Flagler County, but the city of Palm Coast is pretty much the main thing in Flagler County outside of Flagler Beach. The city of Palm Coast for a $400,000 home is $6,542. So you do get a lower purchase price in Palm Coast, no doubt about that. Of course, you can buy a $2 million house in Palm Coast if you wanted to, but in general, across the city of Palm Coast, where the majority of the population is located, your taxes are going to be significantly higher, almost 2% of your purchase price. Whereas you can find that same tax charge in downtown St. Augustine, a much smaller area. Property prices are probably going to be north of $500,000 in the city of St. Augustine, but you're going to have a higher tax base. Now, when you remove yourself from the city of St. Augustine, whereas most people that move to St. Augustine, St. Johns County live outside the city limits, your taxes are going to be around 1.3% of your purchase price. So in my area, it's 1.26. In some areas, it's 1.23. It just depends where you are geographically. So in reality, the cheapest place for taxes is going to be St. Johns County. The more expensive place for taxes is going to be the city of St. Augustine, and then Palm Coast just following right behind it. Okay, so let's talk more about the lifestyle of each. Now, we touched on it a little bit, but let's talk about St. Augustine first, then we'll go into Palm Coast. So I think St. Augustine, in terms of the lifestyle, offers more of an active lifestyle, right? If you like to go and socialize, if you want to go to downtown and look at the architecture, if you want to just take a walk downtown, go to the fort, go to the waterfront, you have the ability to do that. You have the ability to go grab a drink, go get something to eat, and be within that area and enjoy it. Now, outside of that, you have Volano Beach, you have St. Augustine Beach, you have stuff on 210, you have stuff on 16. That offers more of like a residential suburban type of lifestyle. But if you're looking for like a downtown nightlife area, St. Augustine has that, where Palm Coast definitely doesn't. So you have history in downtown St. Augustine, you have dining and entertainment, you have festivals, whether it's a music festival or a food festival or an art festival, all within downtown St. Augustine, and you also have a highly walkable area. Now, if we're looking at Palm Coast, it's going to be more of a suburban area, modern day suburbia, right? Where you have most of your commercial space on Route 100 and Palm Coast Parkway. That's where most of your shopping, dining is going to be. But the one good thing about Palm Coast is your access to nature. They actually have a ton of, whether it's state parks or little tiny parks or just walking trails, biking trails throughout Palm Coast. They have a lot of access to it. And I even go down there to mountain bike. They have this trail, it's called Malacompra. It's right across from Bing's Landing, where it's like a boat ramp. But they have Malacompra, which is a biking trail that they have two trails in it, one for like mountain bikers to go up and down, and one like more of a road trail, like a rocky trail that's it's a lot easier to ride. It's more flat. That takes you out to the beach, which is super beautiful. Aside from that, both of them offer a good bit of outdoor activities. Both of them offer a ton of golf courses here in the area. So that's more of like Palm Coast is going to be more of like, if you're being outdoorsy, if you want to have affordability, you want to have outdoorsiness, you want to be able to go to the state parks, you want to go to Princess Place, you want to go kayaking, Palm Coast is going to have more options for that, but in reality, St. Augustine still has that as well. Okay, now let's talk about schools within St. Johns County and Flagler County, where Palm Coast is located. So St. Johns County has been ranked one of the best school districts, I think, since 2004, when the state started doing grading on all the school systems here. We've been an A-rated school since 2004, and we're one of 2 school districts to do that. And that's really, really impressive. I've seen it thrown around a couple times where we're either number 1 or number 2 in the entire state, and I think that's out of 67 districts, we're number 1 or number 2. I think this past year we're number 2, but I've seen other people say we're number 1. I don't know. I just know that we're really highly rated. So if you are looking for some of the best public schools within the entire state, St. Johns County is going to be your go-to. Now, Palm Coast and Flagler County, it's not far behind. They're rated B, right? And it's getting better. And in reality, every school is different, and where you're zoned and what you're zoned for is going to be different. So you could have an A-rated school in Flagler County that's a B-rated county overall. It just depends where you're going and where you're sending your kids to. more than likely, if you're going in the higher price points, they're going to have the better schools. And that's probably a rule of thumb across the entire country. And the last part of this video is going to be talking about the growth of both areas. Now, I don't think they differ too much. You know, the population in St. Johns County is around 330,000 people. Population of Flagler County is around 160. So when I say that out loud, they're obviously way different populations, but in terms of the growth of both areas and like how they're looking now, they're both growing very, very quickly. By 2050, they're expecting St. Johns County's population to double to be around 600,000 people by the year 2050. And I imagine Palm Coast will experience that same thing, especially if they have a lot more affordable land. Especially in today's world, affordability is a big deal. But they also have a lot more space to build versus us here in St. Johns County, whereas we did have a lot more space to build, but we've just been building and building and building, especially since the pandemic. But even for years before that, they were building at a large clip here, and that's because of our central location at Jacksonville. A lot of people want to live in St. Johns County, get the benefits of living here, like the schools and just the area and the downtown, but also commute to Jacksonville for work, so they get the benefit of a higher paying job in Jacksonville. So in St. Johns County, the one thing that you're never going to be able to change about the city of St. Augustine is that it's always going to be a historic area. People are always going to want to see that, right? They're always going to want to go to the oldest city in the United States. They're going to want to see the paved streets, the horse-drawn carriages, the fort, the colonial quarter. It's just very, very cool. So in terms of like the aspect of investing in the area, in my opinion, when I'm working with people, there's people that like historic homes and there's people that don't. The people that like historic homes only want to live in a historic home. They don't care for the new cookie cutter of all the new construction and the deal that you get there. They like the character and the charm of that older home. And that's not going to change. If anything, I think it's going to multiply, because people here in our area, we have so much new construction that you have your pick of the litter when it comes down to new construction, whether it's Palm Coast or St. Augustine. New construction floor plan is the same in St. Johns County as it is in Flagler. So they're just building a ton of it. Whereas that historic home, you can only have like one historic section, right? Like and how long does it take for a home to become historic, right? At least 50 to 100 years. So that's a long way off for the city of Palm Coast. With that as well, is like they're not building any more land here in the area. So in terms of like being surrounded on St. Augustine and the beaches, Villano Beach, St. Augustine Beach, it's pretty much getting to be as built out as it can. Whereas like if you're looking at Palm Coast, you have a lot more space to build out. Though it was originally platted in the 70s, I imagine they're going to start making some changes to accommodate some higher density housing. But that's all going to be in the future. And if they start making that higher density housing, how does that fare for your housing price in the area? Hard to say. Maybe it's going to make it better because you have a much bigger lot than what everyone else is getting in these smaller new construction developments. And that's happening today. Most of the lots that you see in new construction in a subdivision within Flagler County, they're going to be on 40, 50-foot wide lots. The majority of stuff that's platted within Flagler County in the city of Palm Coast is going to sit on an 80 by 125 lot, and that's been like that since the 70s. And by the way, guys, if you've gotten some value out of this video, do me a solid and tap that subscribe button below. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified of when we post videos every single week. And leave me a comment. Let me know if you like it, dislike it, or if I missed anything. Do me that solid and let me know below. So all in all, I do think that St. Augustine, in terms of like a long-term hold, is going to be better. And that's because of just the tourism industry, the hospitality industry we have here, and the historic aspect. But I don't think it's going to be bad in Palm Coast at all, just because when you're looking at price point, availability of land, and just how many people are relocating to Florida and what are they looking for? Are they looking for the historic area? Or are they looking to be able to afford to live the life that they want here, which Palm Coast can actually give you right now, right? A lot of people can't afford a $500,000 house. More people can afford a $369,000 house. And they got some beautiful houses under $300,000 as well. I was just there the other weekend and I was walking new construction with one of my clients who's moving from Wisconsin, and we were looking at homes for $285,000 new construction. They're gonna give them a 4.99 interest rate. That's a great deal. And that might be a better deal for the majority of people who are like, hey, if I want to go to visit St. Augustine or Flagler Beach, it's a 30, 45-minute drive. It's not bad for me. I don't got to deal with the tourism, the issues there, and I can hang back here in my affordable house. So guys, that is it. This was a high-level overview of the differences between St. Augustine and Palm Coast. If you have any additional questions that we may have not covered here today, just leave me a comment below or reach out to me directly. I'm here to help. If you're looking to move forward and buy a home here in the area, I do have a Calendly link below where you can schedule a 30-minute to an hour consultation with me. Just let me know when, schedule it there, and I'll see you next time.